on this 6-unit building, he's paid so far $427,000 in taxes to various levels of government. That's a third of their entire cost for building this 6-unit building. So if you break it out, just...
You're listening to the Ottawa Real Estate Podcast with your hosts, Paul Stevenson, David Warren, and Greg Campbell. Let's see what's going on in the world of real estate today.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Ottawa Real Estate Podcast. It is episode 150. We made it. Episode 150, Ottawa Real Estate Podcast. My name is Paul Stevenson. I'm a mortgage agent. I'm joined by David Warren, also a mortgage agent. And we're here to talk to you about mortgages and real estate and whatever else the heck we want to talk about. We're not here with Greg today, unfortunately. Last minute issue with Gregory. He won't be with us today. But we got lots to cover, Dave. Lots happened in the last 7 days. But let's start with your weekend. What did you get up to, David? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'd say didn't actually finally had a weekend of not doing much. I felt like I haven't been able to spend a Friday at home doing absolutely nothing in months, not anywhere, no plans. It was great. No complaints on that front of doing nothing.
Yeah, I did much of the same, actually. Was it Thursday at the hockey game? I think it was Thursday. We were at the game, Wednesday maybe. We bumped into each other at the game, which was kind of funny.
Mm-hmm.
Sens are buzzing, other than the loss the other day. But it was a good weekend. Other than that, since that, which I think was Thursday night, I'm having a bit of a blur. Friday and Saturday, I literally did absolutely nothing. It was fantastic. Saturday on the home, it was rainy too. So just a perfect day to curl up with some pho on the couch, watch some movies, watch some soccer. I actually speaking of couch, I had a new couch delivered. I've been waiting 5 months for this couch. Half of it arrived Friday.
I hope it was worth it.
Actually, no, half of it arrived Thursday. They forgot the other half at the warehouse.
Oh.
The second half arrived Saturday morning. So just in time for me to sit on the couch and do nothing. Yeah. But no, otherwise it's certainly fall, like with the rain and all the leaves on the ground. Like it's summer's done. We're really feeling that Canadian winter.
Oh yeah.
Ripping into town here.
For sure. No, I completely agree. It was finally the end of it. But either way. Go ahead.
What are you seeing in the market these days? What's October been so far? Now we're coming up to the end of October. It's October 24th. This comes out. What's it been like?
It's been kind of interesting. I mean, so last episode I was in Toronto. I was in Toronto all weekend for the National Mortgage Conference.
Yeah.
And there for 4 or 5 days. It was a busy time. Really. In speaking with, I spoke with some submission platform providers. So, as for those of you that aren't aware, as mortgage agents, mortgage professionals, we have certain platforms that you can adjudicate and underwrite a deal that you then communicate and submit to the banks with. There's only a handful of these in the country, I think maybe 5. And so I was speaking with one of the owners of one of them, and he was saying how in the 7 days leading up to the conference that he'd seen a massive spike in volumes nationally, which was very interesting. He said prior to that had been very much a lull. He doesn't know why, and he hadn't dug into the numbers too much as far as like exact locations or anything, but I thought that was very interesting. But for myself and agents I speak to and other realtors, that it's been a pretty quiet month again. There was kind of a little bit of ups, but mostly, kind of quick little peaks, but then, rather stagnant, if you will. So I'm interested to see what the numbers are like coming out of October. I know, again, anecdotally, that there's a lot of supply out there. Speaking with one realtor buddy over the weekend, he has 15 listings alone. And that's all over the city, all different price points, most of them in that, 500 to 900 range. And, which I think is telling, because typically, when he's got listings, he has a team, but when he's got listings, it's in the, he's got 3, 4 kind of thing. So 15 is rather pretty crazy. So that's been interesting. Coming out of the conference, a lot of talk around obviously what the Bank of Canada is going to do, with the rate announcement this Wednesday, what's going to happen.
Yeah.
With the inflationary numbers coming out lower than expected, 3.8, and when removing mortgage interest, it actually coming in around that, that 2% range of what they're looking for, and core inflation being down. So there's a lot of belief that they will hold rates, on Wednesday, but also going forward. And Benjamin Tal, who's the lead economist for CIBC and one of the top economists in Canada and globally, he does consult with other world banks around the world and whatnot, that he believes that in Canada that we will start to see, just like we predicted before hearing from him, that rates will start to decrease in the June timeframe, and we'll start to see a quarter point increase around then, and going from there, down and leveling off, decrease and leveling off around 5% from where we are now, as far as like prime's concerned. So it'll take some time to get there, but I think he was clearly listening to us on Torp. Listened to our forecasts a few weeks ago, saying that it'd be about a June start to decrease. Clearly, Benjamin Tal said, "You know what, Paul, David know what they're talking about. I'm going to put this in my national presentation."
Of course, tunes in every week. He says,
"We make the market here at Torp."
Yeah. No, there was an article, CMT, Canadian Mortgage Trends. They actually had an article saying just that. It says, with Canada's headline inflation rate once again trending downward, next week's Bank of Canada rate decision is now looking decidedly more like a rate hold. On Tuesday, Stats Canada reported the headline CPI inflation rose 3.8 in September, down from August 4% growth. The drop was due largely to lower prices for groceries, durable goods, and travel-related services. So, as expected, actually, I think they actually mentioned Benjamin Tal in this article, now that I'm whipping through it. But yeah, very interesting. I mean, it's kind of what we expected when the numbers came out in September, that, there probably wouldn't be much change. Now with October numbers, I mean, it looks even more apparent that rates should hold, which is welcoming news for a lot of obviously variable rate holders, and just I think the economy in general could really use that easing. I think last month was nice just to kind of have that positive news. So having back-to-back announcements like this, I think will probably help bolster the market. It's so weird. Like, we've been talking about the last 2 years, like lack of supply. Now there's just an abundance of supply. Houses galore. Like, houses are sitting for 3-4 months. Like, it's wild. Like, you look at specific neighborhoods, some of them have 2-3 listings coming out a day and just nothing's moving. Like, they're just sitting there. And I don't think it'll take, I know I've said this before, but I think it's like we've said it, now's the time to buy. I do think that market can shift dramatically fast when things start looking more positive. Like, when people start buying and those homes start disappearing, and the people that are kind of sitting on the sidelines or are waiting to buy or are kind of in the market but don't feel any urgency, when that urgency starts kicking in, I think we're going to see homes start selling really quickly. And it's just, when is that going to happen? Like,
people are just sitting on the sidelines, staying at home, living with friends, living with family, and just waiting to buy, but they're not qualifying right now. We've talked about it before, and but when you're qualifying at 8%, that's very tough for a lot of people. What they can qualify for and what they want to buy are two different things. And so that's and then the rates, just what their budget can manage. So I think that'll be really, to your point, once there's some positive news, or once there's one rate decrease, I think, or the fixed rates start to come down, the bonds, then we'll see that drive in business. But from a rate perspective and where the economy's headed, I think we're starting. I found that last week was really the first indication, in my opinion, of the increases are finally starting to get to businesses and starting to get to the employment, because there was a lot of announcements last week of total reduction in staffing. Scotia reducing their staff by 3%. Other tech companies announcing that they're reducing their staff by anywhere from 3 to 6 and 8%. So I think that that's really what they've been looking for when you've got, and that's not only in Canada, that's also through the US, and we're so closely tied to the US that we have to kind of keep lockstep with what the US is doing to maintain our currency. That with unemployment rate going up, that's really what they've been looking for. They want to see that stickiness in consumer spending decrease, like just waning. And so with those layoffs, it's bad news. Obviously, I'm not here saying that layoffs are good or anything like that, but it is a necessity for the economy, for things like this, in order to have like that ripple effect through the economy for the Bank of Canada to be able to make some actual changes and start to provide some relief throughout. So
yeah, and I think I think you hit the nail on the head. Like I think these are always there's always kind of lagging indicators that you can't see initially, but with all those rate increases, I think now, as you said, like businesses have probably been holding on as long as they can before laying people off. They've probably been even, putting money, like further investing money into the business just to maintain some of those jobs and so on. And now we're kind of at a point where everyone's like, they're probably reassessing their business. People are probably reassessing their personal finances and are realizing, okay, we do have to sell the car. We do have to downsize the house. We do have to do X, Y, Z. So I think we are, as you said, we're starting to see that. And to your point, that's kind of what they were waiting to see to be able to start easing some of the pressure, because it seemed like people were invincible. Like we talked about it maybe 6 months ago, after all these rate hikes and all this doom and gloom in the market, restaurants are still packed. Shows are still sold out. Looking at the hockey arena, like everyone's still packed. So people are still out spending money. So it's I don't want to say it's nice, but it's good to see that the market is, I don't want to say rebounding, but like ideally we want to get to that balanced spot. And I think this, everyone has been kind of overspending and
they've been changing their habits. Like, they've been using their credit. They've been using their savings and credit to kind of maintain that spending, which, consumer debt is increasing rapidly. And then so is the consumer defaults. And so that's been jumping pretty dramatically. So all that to say, I think, this Wednesday, we will see a pause. I think that we will see a pause even through the rest of the year as this continues, unless there's some sort of, magical, like just bump in everything. But I don't foresee it, especially like I said, with these employment layoffs and things like that with mass companies. But on the topic though of qualifying, I know you and I were chatting about it before, and we, really when people are coming up for renewal, and there's a huge portion of mortgage holders out there that are coming up for renewal. And I want to say, I was reading the stats for the major banks that it's anywhere from 18 to like 26% of their book over the next 12 months is coming up for renewal, which is massive. And those people are going to be renewing or coming up for renewal into a lot higher rates. Thus far, it's been really hard for those people coming up to move to another institution when you're,
or to negotiate.
Yeah, like for those that aren't aware, is that just because you have a mortgage and you've been paying it on time, but you want to move it, let's say you're with, the big green bank and they offer you X renewal and you say, you know what, I'm going to shop it. So you go to a mortgage broker, they go and shop it to others. Well, you have to requalify for that mortgage, even though you've been paying it, but you're requalifying for it at today's rates, at the plus 2%. All of that, which, really a lot of people can't actually requalify for the same mortgage they have. And so what ends up, because they bought maybe at the max of what they qualified for 5 years ago, and even though they paid that mortgage off, the increase in rates, they just now do not qualify. And so it limits their ability from a consumer availability, being able to go out and shop at other banks and have that. And so a lot of the banks know this as well. And so they're not being as aggressive on their renewal offers, which then again hurts the consumer and they kind of become stuck. And so what ends up happening is on renewal, you're not with that same bank. If your mortgage is with the big green bank, let's say, and they send you a renewal offer and you don't like it, you shop it. And there's other cheaper rates out there to save you money, but you do not qualify for them anymore because your mortgage, what you qualified on was maybe at 5.25%, at the bank at the qualifying rate 5 years ago, whereas now you're having to qualify at 8.5% if you want to switch banks. And that 3.5 difference, even though you paid down your mortgage, makes a substantial difference in qualifying. So you then are stuck having to just sign with your existing bank because they don't have to requalify you for that mortgage. It's like a loophole on that renewal that they don't have to qualify you, don't have to look at your income, don't have to do anything. Whereas if you want to move banks, they're re-looking at your income. So if you recently became self-employed or you recently changed jobs or, anything like that, or you're on disability, short-term or long-term disability for whatever reason, or someone's on mat leave or whatever it may be, that you can't qualify. You can't move banks. And so staying with that same bank, they don't look at that again. You can just renew, but it's not necessarily going to be at the best rate. And so it becomes a really big feedback loop and really challenging because it's not in the consumer's best interest. And then this article came out last week where an unknown rule within OSFI, which is the regulator overseeing the banks, had a rule in there buried that even the banks didn't know. And this came out last week, that you could qualify if you had an insured mortgage and you qualified at the contract rate. How everyone's been handling transfers on insured and insurable mortgages is that you had to qualify at that rate plus 2%. Well, this article came out that hidden deep inside OSFI's rules that no one ever knew about and they never let anyone know about was that they could qualify you at that contract rate. It's a massive shock to the industry. I was on a call on Thursday even with an area manager from a major institution. They have over 150 billion in assets under management. They have 6 different lenders under their banner, and they didn't even know about it. It's really interesting that they had kept this from the banks and from consumers, because it really is inhibiting consumers from getting a better deal.
Yeah, and important to note too that it's the insurer that doesn't require the new stress test, but lenders still can. So I think to your point, like lenders didn't even know that they had the option to not add that stress test. So even as agents, we'd be talking to clients and we're qualifying them at 8.5%. Like, well, fortunately on this has happened many times over the last 6 to 12 months where clients, they just don't qualify to move, right? Like you said, either the rates are too high now and they don't qualify for the same mortgage or less of a mortgage than 5 years ago, but at the same time they're kind of pigeonholed with their lender, where their lender might not be offering them any sort of competitive rate, but they're stuck there just because of the fact that they can't move. So it's very interesting. I think it's very good for consumers. It'll certainly, now that it's becoming more widely known, I definitely expect like lenders to step in and offer maybe deals and this sort of thing, like, preferred rates for switches and so on. But I think also for agents and consumers, like as this becomes more widely known, people will maybe think more now to speak to a broker. I think a lot of people still, I was talking this with someone last week, a real estate lawyer who's been doing it for some years. And we were just saying, 10, 15 years ago, even going to when we started in brokering in 2013, it was still considered almost like a dark industry, like everything was paper based and brokers charge crazy fees and like you only go to a broker if you're desperate. That was kind of the sentiment in the industry. Even working at the bank previously, that was kind of the perception of a mortgage broker. Now it's definitely, I think, more accepted, if not the standard, to speak to a broker before even speaking to your bank. And definitely to get pre-approved before shopping, that's standard. Like even when we started, that wasn't normal. Like you just go shopping and then, we better get a mortgage now. So I think people think now of brokers for purchasing. I don't think a lot of people think of brokers for transfers and switches, unfortunately. Obviously, we tell our clients, but the general public, I don't think when they have a mortgage coming up for renewal with the big green or big red or blue or whatever color you want to deal with, they don't know to even talk to a broker. They probably don't even think that's a possibility. So I think having this information out there and giving people the knowledge that they can actually not only talk to a broker, but that they don't have to requalify. Well, they do, but not with the stress test. I think will create a lot more conversations, which then, as we said before, is very good for the consumer, so they actually have choice in their renewal. They're not stuck with that same lender.
Yeah, I think the number is roughly around 40% now of buyers use a mortgage broker as opposed to their bank, but the number on first-time home buyers is in the 60s or 70s as far as percentage of first-time home buyers that use a broker. So to your point, it used to be just for like if you had if you're having a tough time on credit, if you were having a, going through everything that you needed a private lender or something like that, and that was kind of on the broker, but it certainly shifted in that regard. So to your point, yeah, absolutely. Your mortgage coming up for renewal, you're looking at, it's not just a purchase, you're looking at refinancing, anything like that. Like talk to a broker, not just your specific bank, because you can shop that mortgage and look to get a better rate elsewhere. And really, any ethical professional as well would be telling you, find out from your bank what they're offering for your renewal. Let me know what it is, and we'll make sure that we can find a solution that's better. And if not, then yeah, just there's no, sign with your current bank and renew there. But let's have that transparency. Let's have that conversation of where, what are they offering you? Yes, you can just sign and be done with it. But if you could save thousands of dollars to sometimes go through the hassle of, pay stub and letter of employment and things like that, then it becomes a conversation of, well, is that thousands or tens of thousands of dollars in savings worth that, little bit of legwork? So I implore you, certainly to your point, Paul, implore all of you to speak to, when coming up to renewal, to speak to a professional. And I'll be interested to see how this news, and it certainly reverberated through the industry this past week, of the insured mortgages from a qualifying perspective, because this really does open up a lot of doors for people that really were seemingly closed from, on renewal.
Countless conversations already this year for transfers where people just like, I had to tell them, like, you have no option to transfer because of that exact thing. So yeah, interesting. I think I'm definitely going to go back through upcoming renewals, like people that I've spoken to that have renewals coming up in the next, say, 6 months, just to make sure that they're aware that this is possible and they may be able to get better rates. Renewals are such a finicky thing. Like I always tell clients, find out what your current lender's offering you. Let me know what that is, and then we'll see what we can do. See if we can beat it. I had a client last week who was offered from their existing lender 5.49 on a 5-year fixed, which is below all lenders right now. Mm-hmm. So, the easy thing for me to do is to just say, well, that's amazing. Like re-sign with that lender. And clients really appreciate that honesty. Like, I think people always assume that we're going to try to, finagle them into some new, shiny new mortgage. But really, we are here to kind of offer like nonpartisan advice. Like, I always try to put myself in your shoes. Like, if you're me, or if you're, a friend or loved one, like, how would I advise you to act in this in this position? And then that's kind of how I advise people. And I know you kind of treat clients the same way. So, important. If you're up for renewal at any point in the next 6 months, a year, or even in the coming years, like if you're, if you locked in at a higher rate than you want to, we can certainly have those discussions as well. There was one more article, Dave, you wanted to talk to. I think one of your clients was actually featured in the Financial Post.
He wrote it. He wrote the article.
Not even featured, he wrote it.
Yeah, he wrote the article. I thought it was great. So Brad Cartier, great friend and client, is a small builder. We've done number of projects together, and it's an article labeled, want more housing constructed, how about taxing builders less? So it's going through actually the amount of taxes that he's had to pay on a small 6-unit building that I've been helping him do the financing on, that we've been working on for quite a while, that the total amount of taxes, and he lays it all out in the article. I do implore all of you to read it because I think it is really eye-opening, is that this is on a 6-unit building. So when people talk about, rents, wanting rents lower, or for developers to build more affordable housing, one of the aspects that really need to be addressed, and I've said it before, and we've talked before, is the amount of taxes, development fees, permit fees that go into building any property. On this 6-unit building, he's paid so far $427,000 in taxes to various levels of government. That's a third of their entire cost for building this 6-unit building. So if you break it out, just like by per unit, people talk about rents being high or anything like that, which I agree, but so are mortgage rates, and so are what the costs of building are. That's $71,000 per unit in taxes alone. And that does not include CPP and EI to any of the laborers that are working, what income taxes that they pay on their income for that development. It's really eye-opening when you actually kind of break down and see those types of numbers for what. Again,
that's just taxes. That's not materials. That's not a shovel in the ground. Literally almost $500,000 before even putting a shovel. Yeah, that's right. Like that's not
the HST on lumber, on siding, on roofing, and all that. So, constituting a third of his build cost. So let's say, at 427, let's say, build costs then 1.2, 1.3, what sort of taxes you're paying on another 800,000 of, over HST, you're another 100,000 in HST on $800,000 in materials purchased. So, that's wild. And again, this is in a smaller town as well. It's not even in, this is a build in Rockland. This is not in Toronto or anything like that. This is in Rockland that these types of fees are being charged. So government talks about wanting to build more affordable housing, wanting to build more supply for rentals. And I know you look around Ottawa and you see a lot of cranes and, and all that. And sure, there is a lot of stuff going up. Mm-hmm. But if you want affordable housing, you want rents to come down, there needs to be less taxes charged on builders, on product in general. And I know, even just kind of going through obviously you get some comments on any article and, people commenting about, well, if tax and development fees go down or scrapped, who's going to pay for infrastructure for new houses, for new hoods? The tooth fairy? Well, that's what property taxes are for. That's what, other types of tax are for. They don't have these types of high development fees in every jurisdiction, mm-hmm. in every province, or, in every state. You look at the US, they don't have these types of development fees and permit fees, and they seem to have infrastructure. There are other ways, but
I think the worst line here is, and the most accurate is the last line in the third paragraph. It says the uncomfortable truth is that it's owners and renters who ultimately pay the tax burden on the house they purchase, which is true because, the builders are forking out this $250,000. Let's just say per unit, even let's just say 100,000 per unit. That is like, they're not just going to eat that has to be passed off in some form. Right. So there was a section here. He says, to be clear, as a society, we're asking builders to put more shovels in the ground, but then turning around with our hands out, asking for literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in return. Sure, you can build more houses. That'll be 200,000 each, please. At least they ask politely. He says, we are Canadian after all. It's an odd game of Monopoly that fewer and fewer sophisticated business owners are willing to play.
Yeah. I mean, it's very accurate. And there's a reason why a lot of developers stopped, not only are slowed down, like not only because of where interest rates are at, but because of the costs involved, and they can't actually build quick enough because you need capital. Like that 427,000 that Brad's talking about paying, that's out of pocket up front while building without any recoup immediately, and it takes time to recoup that back. So if you removed, a portion of that even, well, then you can then there's capital for that developer to then be able to spurn and build other properties quicker and actually get supply going and get builds going in a quicker fashion, as opposed to, okay, we have to finish this 1.6 unit. We then have to wait, right now, the CMHC is 9 months behind on issuing insurance certificates for multi-residential buildings. So you're waiting 9 months for CMHC underwriter to actually pick up the file, analyze it, say, yes, we'll insure this property from a mortgage insurance on the back end standpoint. Then they can go ahead and fund that takeout. So the entire time they're paying construction costs or interest on their construction loan and waiting for CMHC to come around on these. So, which again is ludicrous that CMHC is that behind and that understaffed. And they haven't changed that. That has not changed at all through COVID, and it's been preposterous. So again, and it's a Crown corporation, and they're the only ones that are insuring multi-residential buildings. So you want developers, you want affordable housing, you want supply. Let's bring down the taxes and let's staff, these Crown corporations, CMHC, make it more efficient.
Well, let's use some of those tax dollars and create some salaries,
Yeah, let's use some of those insurance premiums to actually staff the CMHC properly. The default insurance premiums that are even being charged on these are hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes, and the default rate, as we've mentioned, is under 1%.
Yeah,
so it's just it's a revenue source, like
billions
of dollars.
So why can't they hire more people to get these certificates out to fund these projects quicker Again, this is what holds up development. This is what holds up builders being able to roll their capital from one project to the next. And that's what's going to increase our supply, drive down prices for purchasers, for first-time home buyers, repeat buyers, and drive down prices for renters and make it more affordable.
Dave's our next housing minister. He's
not happening.
No. That was a good, very informative show. You know, it's always when Greg's not here, there's a certain je ne sais quoi that's missing. But we hold it together. It's just very rate and mortgage focused. But I hope everyone appreciates that. For anyone listening, any realtors listening, I should mention I'm going to be at the OREB trade show, which is taking place this Thursday. So if you're there, come by, say hi. Otherwise, don't say hi. Send me an email instead, you know. I got mood boosts. I got 3 today. So number 1, I like all of them. One of them I've used before, but a long time ago. Number 1, did you hear about the sensitive burglar? He takes things personally.
Oh, wow.
Very sensitive. So sensitive. Wow. Number 2, why do cows have hooves instead of feet? Because they lactose. They lactose.
I kind of like that
All
one.
my lactose people out there. Number 3, I hate spelling errors. You mix up 2 letters and your whole post is urined.
Wow.
Just like that.
Wow.
Just like that. Episode 150. How did we make it this far? Hilarious. And what's funny is the other probably 150 episodes prior to that as the Friday wrap-up are not being factored in. So 150, we made it. Greg, we missed you. To another 50 episodes. We'll see you at 200 and 151. See you next week. Deuces, everyone. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe because we'd really like that.